Time management is ruining your time. And if you're one of those people that aren't able to schedule their time and stick to a schedule, in this video I will present to you an alternative methodology that could actually help you get things done. Even if you tend to be a person that is just horrible at managing your time and using a schedule. But to understand why you tend to struggle so much with time management, we have to understand an essential thing about psychology. Some people have the main operating function of judgment, which means they can extract information and make a quick decision about it on how they evaluate information. But different people that tend to be more perceiving in their processing time, they cannot make a simple judgment or a decision. Time management is in fact about decision making. How would you approach and how would you act ahead if you want to approach something? How sensible are you to information that you're processing? If you are really considerate about the decisions that you're making, planning will come to you as more difficult because it doesn't fit the way you tend to think. So, to put it more blunt, not every time management works for every person, because for every person their thinking tends to be different to another person. And this is also why time management tends to work out so different from person to person. Time management is about energy management. And the reason why you want to manage your time is because so you have a more efficient and energy-friendly way of approaching things that makes it easier for you to implement it. And this is also in fact what productivity is about. Productivity is essentially energy management. You may have all the time you want to have, but if you have no energy to perform well, you won't gonna get them done. So here's something that you can do in order to improve your time management. The first step is to plan less things. Now, the more things that you tend to plan, the more things you have to manage and organize. If your weakness is to be bad at organizing things, you probably shouldn't organize so many things. So instead of planning like 10 or 15 different things, instead consider to plan one important thing instead of multiple ones. Now, the reason why we tend to plan so many things is because we want to get a lot of things done. And usually when you think about a productive person, we usually think of a person that also gets a lot of things done. But this isn't really true, because planning involves actually a lot of planning. It involves a lot of decisions that you have to make ahead. But instead of working and executing what we could do, we spend a lot of time managing and planning because we are not planning the thing that's mainly essential. We're planning out those things, and if we plan out those things, it's very likely that we will make a mistake and the plans don't turn out the way we want them to turn out. This is why it's better to plan one thing well and make sure that we execute on it instead of planning 10 or 15 different tasks that we are really likely to procrastinate because we tend to miss out on things. And the way we can decide which thing to plan is actually by figuring out which task would have the greatest impact. Now, if you've been a lot into the productivity subject, you probably heard about the idea of eating the big frog, or getting the most important task done. But there's a second layer to it. After we found out the Pareto task, or the most impactful task that we tend to have, it's time to not only to do it, but also to 10x it. Do twice as much or 4 times as much on one simple task instead of many. Now, the way this could look like, let's say you're a writer, and your goal is to write 1,000 words a day, and this is the most important thing that you could do. Now, to 10x it would mean actually to write 5,000 or 10,000 words a single day, and by eliminating every other task that tends to go in your way. Now, by maximizing on the thing that creates the greatest amount of benefits is also the greatest way to create the most amount of growth. If you write 10,000 words a day or 5,000 words a day, in 2 weeks you will have written pretty much a single book. This is also the way that you can avoid the complexity of planning and make planning a lot easier. It will make it easier for you to learn from your mistakes and to figure out what did go wrong within your planning instead of trying to figure out for 10 or 15 different things. Now, I must warn you, you cannot always completely avoid everything that you tend to do, but maximizing on one big task will create the greatest amount of growth. Now, the second step of the methodology is to go with the flow. Now, on the one hand, it may seem good to be disciplined and to push through your task when you have to get something done. But this isn't really always productive. You know, think of it this way. Self-control requires energy. And the more self-control you need and the more difficult you make a task to be, the more energy it will cost from you. So even if you may have been disciplined and had a lot of self-control in the morning, after the deep work session, you have no longer this much energy because you're going against the stream, you're going against the resistance. In this way is how you tend to waste a lot of energy. Now sometimes you have to push through certain tasks, but let's say you're a writer and your goal is to write in the morning, sometimes there will be days where you won't feel like writing. And like for my case, like 2 days ago, I didn't feel like writing at all and I felt more like studying. So sometimes it is alright not to do the things that you plan to do if it is more energy efficient. There are sometimes days where I feel more like studying, and recreating the priorities to go in more efficient and energized way could be more efficient because now you're using your motivation, your drive for you instead of against you. This approach is also really helpful when you tend to be procrastinating. Yeah, sometimes you will have no motivation to get a thing done, but instead of trying to fight through it, figure out why do you don't have any motivation and what do you have motivation for. And instead of pushing it away, think about how you could make your different motivation productive. Now you have to understand this one thing, you're never really unmotivated. Just because you're not motivated to do the task that you have to do, doesn't mean you're not motivated to do these other things. Probably you may have motivation to watch Netflix all day or watch really good YouTube videos all day, but you always have motivation. The question is like, how will you fuel this motivation in a more productive way? So you have more energy and more joy within doing the work by making the most out of your desires in attraction. But there is a twist to it. And sure, it may be great to go always with your interest, but if you don't know where you're going, you're really likely to get lost. And you're really likely to get distracted. And so when you have a desire, it's great to go with the flow of it, but you always need a task to know where you're going. So try to come up with a task that you already feel like doing it, and you will already have a drive for getting at least something done which is productive and will make you feel good and more energized. This will create also the momentum to go even further and further, so even if you didn't get the most important thing done, you got something done. Now the third step is a bit more controversial, but in order to overcome procrastination, you have to overcome fear. Our procrastination is based on fear. The reason why things are so stressful is because they make you feel inadequate. They make you feel incompetent when you can't get the thing done. If you are trying to create a really good YouTube video, you have a lot of imposter syndrome of thinking, okay, your voice isn't alright, the way you're recording it isn't alright, and you're never really sure how to approach it. It's creating anxiety because complicated tasks always require a new approach. They require your creativity in order to figure out how to do something more different. And this is, if you're struggling with procrastination, what really is helpful is to figure out what you are afraid of. What is the thing that makes you so resistant towards it? Now, when you're a writer, writing a bad page or a bad chapter is really hurting your ego. Our ego is the main reason why we tend to procrastinate. It's really destroying our self-worth. And so in order for our body to protect ourselves, it's creating this resistance in order to keep us safe. Procrastination in of itself may seem not like a bad thing, because it tries to keep you safe, it tries to make sure that you will avoid the stress. But because we haven't learned how to deal with the emotion and try to approach something just seemingly as analytical, we don't resolve with the emotion. And so in order to overcome procrastination, it is not about planning, but it is about emotion. It's about emotional management rather than time management that solves procrastination. And the way to deal with those emotions is by first of all figuring out that we have such emotions. We are experiencing fear and stress on a daily basis. And if you are afraid of doing a task, try to figure out why you're afraid of it. What is the cause and the value that's being threatened if you perform the task? Now, if let's say your value is to be intelligent and to look smart, doing something more difficult may hurt this value because you think, okay, if I'm not going to perform well, this would make me look stupid. And you're afraid of looking stupid, so you tend to avoid doing the task altogether. But learning and trying something new could be also a way to expand yourself only if you've changed your belief by figuring out doing hard things that make me look stupid make me in fact smarter. And so to figure out why we procrastinate, we have to figure out the underlying belief that creates this resistance in the first place. In this, what you have to understand, there is no such thing as truly a limiting belief. Our beliefs are about a value. They try to protect you and to take care of something that you care about. So you cannot get rid of a limiting belief without getting rid of a value. And so what you can do is, you cannot change your beliefs, but you can adapt your beliefs to be optimal for your situation. But in order to do this, you have to figure out which belief it is and with what belief do you want to replace it. Let's say you're really afraid of recording a video because you think it will make you look stupid, because you think you're not good enough if you're trying it. And so because you care about creating a good video so much, every time you tend to fail at it and it is really truly difficult, you will feel bad about your self-worth. But instead of trying to change your mind and say, you know what, me trying to do something which is difficult is actually making me more of a hard worker. It's actually making me a better person to talk and record those videos because I'm going against my limit and this is great. And this is about creating value and connection towards the thing that you tend to be most resistant of. Perhaps the things that you hate doing may be the greatest thing for you that you could do for yourself. But in order to make them attractive, you have to figure out the value first, which you could connect to this resistant task that you want to avoid so much.